Hello, dear friends. Today we are going to learn relative clause. Okay, there are two types of relative clause, identifying and non-identifying relative clause. Relative clause usually begin with a relative pronoun, who, which, that, whom, whose. An identifying relative clause gives information about a noun in order to identify or define it. Okay, that's why it's called identifying relative clause or defining relative clause. For example, do you have anything that I can use to open this tin with? Here you can see identifying relative clause is that. So identifying relative pronoun is that here, and identifying relative clause is that I can use to open. Second, I've met the lady who you interviewed last month. She's very nice. So who is relative pronoun here, and who you interviewed is identifying or defining relative clause. So here you can see in first sentence, anything is defined by that I can use to open, like tin opener or something like that. And lady is defined here with who you interviewed. All right. Now, next, a non-defining relative clause gives us extra information about something we have already identified. So, for example, that's a chart, comma, which is the tallest building in London. So the chart is already known by us. For example, let's say we are talking to each other, and I am giving more information about it. I'm not defining, but I'm giving extra information about it, which is the tallest building in London. So Sharp is the tallest building in London. Next, my dad, who is only 20, still cycles every day. I'm giving extra information about my day, which is his age, who is nearly 70, still cycles every day. All right. We use commas to separate the non-defining relative clause from the main clause. So here you can see commas. So these are non-defining relative clauses. They are separated from the main clause. I hope this is understandable. Next slide. We use different relative pronouns in different relative clause. So every or each relative pronoun has its specific function in relative clause. We use which for things in both identifying and non-identifying clause. For example, the thing which I find hardest about English is a grammar. So here you can see which, and the thing is identified by this relative clause. I've lost my mobile, which I only bought yesterday. So sad. So here you can see which again, and this sentence is non-identifying relative clause, and this is separated with comma. And here you can see mobile. Mobile is given extra information with which, blah, blah, blah. Okay, next. For people, we use who in both identifying and non-identifying clause. So, for example, is it the man who sold you his car? So the man is identified by who here, and this is identifying clause. Next example, my father, who always loved his job, carried on working until he was 80. Wow. Oh, respect to that man. All right, father is identified or like given more information about father with who, and it's separated by commas in both sides. All right, next. In an identifying relative clause, we can also use that for people or things. So it says only in identifying relative clause. For example, I don't know anyone that who can help me. So here you can see that or who, which you can use for people, so anyone. Can you put that back, that which I give you on the table, please? So bag is identified by that or which here. So to summarize, that we can use for people and things here. And of course, who is used only for people and which is used for things. Okay, let's jump to next slide. In an identifying relative clause, we often leave out a relative pronoun when it is an object of the clause. For example, so have you read the email I sent last Tuesday? So here, can you see relative pronoun? No. Now, have you read the email which or that I sent last Tuesday? So here you can see which and that written or used. And because, so here in first sentence, they are omitted. Why? The reason is that which and that are used as the object of the sentence here. So that's why you can omit relative pronoun. And next example, there were lots of people I'd never seen before at John's party. There are no relative pronouns in this sentence. Next one, there were lots of people that I'd never seen before at John's party. And here, who, that is used. And they can be omitted. Why? Because they are used as the object of the sentence. We use whose for possession. When you talk about somebody's or something's possession, you use whose. So I can't remember whose pen I've borrowed. Is it yours? So I have borrowed somebody's pen. So this pen belongs to somebody, not me. That's why I'm asking whose pen I have borrowed. I don't know. And one more thing here I'd like to add. Possession is not only used for people. It can also be used for things, places, blah, blah, blah. For example, the shop whose windows were broken during the last night storm. You can say blah, blah, blah. I said the shop whose glasses were broken. Whose glasses were broken. Shop is identified by whose. So in this sentence, you can use whose, even though you are talking about thing, I mean glass. All right. And I mean shop here. Shop is the subject of the sentence. Next, prepositions generally go at the end of relative clause. Basically, they are at the end of the relative clause. For example, I know the actor that you are thinking of. Here you can see of at the end of the sentence. And is this the letter you were waiting for? So waiting for at the end. You can see this preposition. Prepositions can go before whom and which, but this can sound quite formal or old-fashioned. So only before whom and which you can use prepositions. For example, your help was really useful, for which I am very grateful. Here you can see for which, before the which it's used here. I mean, preposition is used before which. Is this the person to whom you were writing? To whom, here you can see. Or you can put these prepositions at the end of the sentence. For example, your help was really useful, which I am grateful for. So next one, is this a person who, it should be here, you were writing to? Not whom, but who it should be, because who is the object here. And if you use preposition at the end, in this sentence, you should use who. But before, if you use preposition before relative pronoun, you use to whom, not to who. Okay. And note, we only use whom when the person is the object of a relative clause or after a preposition. So here, I have just explained you. So when you want to use like whom as the object, when it's object, I mean, you can use preposition before it. It should be so. It should be whom here, not who, as I have just explained. And why? Why? There may be questions. Why you're using like prepositions at the end of the sentence or before the relative pronouns? The reason is that in dictionaries or generally, like think of, you think of something or you think of doing something and you wait for somebody or something. You are grateful for something and you write letter to someone. That's why, so after these words or verbs, you use preposition. That's why it's common to use prepositions either at the end of the relative clause, or if it's formal or old-fashioned kind of, you can use before whom or which. I hope it's understandable. And finally, there is task. Add a relative pronoun to these sentences where possible, be, or necessary, and. Here you can see six sentences. You should read them and decide if it's possible to add or if it's not necessary to add relative pronoun. Take your time and do this exercise. All right, guys, since you have finished, now you have answers now, you can check it. If you have made mistakes, work on your mistakes. If you have questions, you can ask me. You're very welcome to ask me question. I will be delighted to help you to figure it out. All right. Good luck, guys. Keep learning English. Cheers.